Blizzcon is happening any day now, and in these closed periods like these league seasons is usually when we start getting completely legit data mined information that actually reveals the big features of the next expansion. Now this is how we learned about Dragonflight, if you guys remember. This is how we learned about the War Within and Khaz'Algar, and right now it might not be any different. We have data mined some incredibly interesting mounts containing detailed VRYKUL architecture on the live servers, which could point towards potential last Titan features. Playable VRYKUL have been in the talks since Wrath of the Lich King, and right now is the perfect opportunity. They are the ancestors of the humans, they are Titan creations, and we are getting a Titan expansion. Crazy stuff is happening in Northrend, and existential stuff will be happening to the VRYKUL in general, with us having to fight the Titans. So what is everything we currently know, and are the VRYKUL legit on the horizon as a potential playable race? 12.on is out, Midnight Season 2, and right now is like the perfect window of opportunity for you to really up your game to enter Season 2 with a very good plan. Over here is offering the best WoW coaching, so don't learn the routes from outdated guides, don't go into the first raid nights blind. Over here pairs you with the best WoW players to give you direct one-on-one time. They will live review your talents, gem links, raid tactics, and it's all up to date, literally up to today. So they will coach you with a new raid, and you can save so much time, and you can seriously get ahead of the curve. Best of all, for this opportunity, they just came out with the biggest discount code yet, Dorons12, but it's only valid until the end of August, which is honestly the biggest discount they had offered, so I would use the opportunity. So use Dorons12 to get ahead of everyone. So believe it or not, I mean, time is going like crazy by. BlizzCon is coming out in just a couple of weeks. We are soon to be counting days, and right now, as I said, it's kind of that period where we start data mining some really suspicious stuff that can actually reveal legit expansion features. Almost certainly the last Titan is getting announced in just a bit, and things are kind of starting to heat up at this point. If you remember, we actually data mined a whole bunch of expansion features way before the expansions actually came out. Actually, not way before they came out, but before they were announced. During Shadowlands, we data mined some dragon mounts and a whole bunch of dragon stuff that we've talked about for a couple of months, and we ended up getting Dragon Isles and Dragonflight. During Dragonflight, we started data mining these griffins, these like books and everything, and these Khaz'Algar mentions, and then we of course got the War Within. Also, right around Dragonflight, we started discovering some goblin and zeppelin type stuff that ended up actually being the Undermine patch. Furthermore, if you remember, as early as like Shadowlands and Dragonflight, like around that period, we began getting a whole bunch of revamp assets. That's one of the reasons I've been talking about the world revamp for years. Like during one point, we just got so much Blood Elven stuff that it got super suspicious, and this was like a year or two before the World Soul Saga was even announced. So even back then, we discovered that Silvermoon and Kel'Thuzad is getting revamped. And now we could potentially be getting something, as just a couple of days back we data mined an incredibly interesting mount in a game called the Heartskeeper Wandering Caravan, and this has been data mined on the live servers listed as an in-game shop mount, but it's not actually on the shop at the moment. Now the fact that it is a shop mount doesn't actually mean like this whole hint is BS, because as I said, we data mined shop mounts for Dragonflight. Like there was pretty much the exact same mechanism how we discovered Dragonflight. Now the mount itself is kind of weird, honestly, because it's not technically like a VRYKUL mount, it's a yak, but it has a really detailed VRYKUL house on it. Like the architecture itself is undeniable. Seeing that the VRYKUL are actually huge, I mean, they're something akin to giants, obviously when compared to humans. The evidence here isn't the fact that they had built like a racial mount for the VRYKUL, as I honestly doubt the VRYKUL would even fit on this, but as the Thor and others would fit, they probably would as well. The big talk about this mount is the fact that they created this whole new very detailed house for the VRYKUL and their aesthetics. Now, obviously, we are going into revamped Northrend, so the VRYKUL would get revamped, but the VRYKUL in particular are very interesting. I mean, first of all, the VRYKUL are actually a really popular and highly requested, like one of the most highly requested playable races, and it's potentially not potential, I mean, it is one of the last chances for Blizzard to add a really interesting race. The lore itself is also completely there. Now, back in Wrath, the VRYKUL were mostly just villains and the bad guys of the expansion, with many of them joining the Scourge, but actually, a lot has happened since then. We know, for example, during BFA, they sent one of their fleets, they sent their traders all the time, and we actually got the book Exploring Azeroth Northrend, where we got the update to Northrend, the lore side of Northrend after the Shadowlands. That is the last official status update of the continent. The Bronzebeard brothers themselves reported activities of the VRYKUL across the frozen continent. For example, in Howling Fjord, the VRYKUL clans have been mainly keeping to themselves. The Winter Scorn actually almost completely managed to rebuild the giant city of Scorn in Howling Fjord, and the Dragonflight clan continued to regularly attack the walls of Waldegard. Now, in Sholazar Basin, the VRYKUL have been roaming around and capturing proto-dragons to reinforce their mount stables, and in Grizzly Hills, the VRYKUL have been fairly quiet, probably the lowest bit of their activity, which Muradin himself assumed is because of the presence of the Horde troops. The biggest part of the Northern VRYKUL is actually in Jotunheim, and they're still around, and they're still challenging each other in these like duels of glory. If you remember, these guys used to work with the Lich King, and they sent their troops there, but they have no death god to serve anymore. So the VRYKUL are not actually gone, and also, despite these guys primarily being villains, they're not actually bad guys. If you know the lore, you know that the VRYKUL are actually humans. I mean, certain VRYKUL rebelled with other Titan Forged and ventured south, and that is how we got the humans, dwarves, and the gnomes. So it is entirely possible that a certain rebellious group joins us back there, just like how we got the Earthen, which, despite being a different group in Khaz'Algar, are technically their ancestor, the ancestors of the dwarves. Furthermore, while we were talking about the war within, actually the VRYKUL have been continuously pushed on us even in the war within. If you remember, we had VRYKUL raiders from the Bloodway clan that were drawn to the Siren Isle. Now that is of course the lore, but when it comes to the VRYKUL actually being playable from the gameplay side of things, that is actually totally realistic, and one big factor are the Kultiran. Now, of course, in Northrend, some VRYKUL can actually be gigantic, but technically, lore-wise, the Tauren are also gigantic. They're much larger than the in-game counterparts. So one thing that makes this case stronger is the existence of the Kultiran. They could totally just work on that Kultiran rig, and realistically they're around the same size, maybe slightly larger. It is also possible that this could be like a different tribe of the VRYKUL that we discovered that are not just complete giants. Furthermore, there is some evidence going around about the potential shattering of Northrend that could happen, which is actually a very realistic scenario. I mean, keep in mind, some decently legitimate hints are going around that at the end of Midnight, Zelda tries to become Azeroth, and then the Titans step in and awaken her as one of their own, and then we're going to have to fight the Titan version of Azeroth in Northrend. Now, if something really big happens with the World Soul, it's entirely possible that Azeroth as a planet is going to react weirdly, like how when the World Soul was ripped out in Harandar and we got that Rift of Aln, there was forever a weird zone. Now, imagine if Azeroth awakens, we could be talking storms, like a mini cataclysm, so the actual shattering of Northrend is possible, and it could be a good introduction to a revamped Northrend, so it's not just the same continent, just with new models. This could split the VRYKUL tribes and cause a whole lot of problems, which could be kind of similar to the Amani stuff that we are currently getting in Midnight. However, VRYKUL being playable would of course be super cool. I mean, it's one of the coolest looking races with very interesting lore, inherent connection to the humans, and actually it's super relevant currently to the Last Titan. I mean, these guys used to be Titan servants, now they're just kind of their own people, and they're just doing crazy stuff in Northrend. Seeing that something is going to structurally change, I mean, they can't just keep living in their own ways, and I'm certain that some VRYKUL are going to turn against the Titans, while some could potentially see it as like the return of their makers, the old gods, and then we could have like different factions of the VRYKUL. Sure, right now, I mean, I completely understand it's small evidence-based amount, but keep in mind, as I said, we're literally just a couple of weeks pre-Blizzcon. We're talking like 3-4 weeks. We're just counting the days until the Last Titan announcement. Based on previous experience, right now is kind of that exact timing when we start getting the big data mines, the actual legit leaks and hints that can point out towards features of the future expansion. Thanks for watching. Check my video on Undercity and Terrace Blades coming soon by clicking on the screen, and check out my brand new Witcher lore channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.